Welcome to KP Unpack. That's my best radio voice, getting better at this game. Today, though, we have a special guest to unpack, so to speak. NK Chaitanya is the founder, CEO of Track 3D, one of my favorite portfolio companies. For all my portfolio companies that are listening, he's one of my favorites. You have to decide whether you're the other favorite or not. Because much like children, we do have favorites. We just don't admit it in public. So how's it going, NK?
Going good, KP. Thanks for having me. I was always looking up. One of the success metrics was, coming on this podcast. I really think that, we are getting on the right path.
I don't know if you know, it's the number one podcast in AEC.
I do. I 100% do. That's why this was the bar.
It didn't used to be. We just started saying it. And then Manifest Destiny, we became the number one podcast in AEC.
No, I recently saw your banter with Bricks and Bytes as well, right? You were having it about that was super fun.
Those guys, they do it for a living, and I still have more YouTube subscribers. I'm like, this is what you guys do for a living. I just do this for because I don't have any hobbies. Like, this is my hobby.
I think it's all the employees of your Portco companies. KP. Exactly.
Best way to get your next round of funding.
Absolutely.
That could be true, but we'll see. Actually, a lot of my LPs listen to the podcast.
Absolutely.
But they don't say anything online because they're just funny that way. I see them in person and they talk about how much they enjoy the podcast. And it's like, it'd be nice for you to I don't know, promote it for me a little bit, but they want to keep. I'm like a great babysitter. Nobody wants to tell their friends about them because they're afraid.
No, I'm guilty of that as well, right? I follow your podcast completely, but I have never commented or reposted it with my thoughts because you have great views, KP, actually. And I agree with them most of the time, right? It's not like I don't agree with them as well.
I need more controversy. Is that what you're saying?
A lot of people will say no to that.
Yeah. But you want to talk about H-1B visa?
No. Okay.
We don't want to talk about that stuff. Well, cool. For everyone, hopefully you already know me. Otherwise, I'm not sure how you found this podcast. But NK, why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing, your back, just give everybody, set the stage.
Absolutely, KP. Thank you. So, hey everyone, I go by NK and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Track 3D. We are three co-founders, started this about 4 years back. But even before this, right from my early days of starting my career, which is almost 20 years back now, I've been very fascinated by the world of physical AI. That is 3D vision, AI, robotics, and IoT, all of this combining together. And I have only worked in startups. Either it was my own startup or our startup getting acquired by some company and we going and continuing that division. So it's always been physical AI because, I could never understand a blueprint, for example. Looking at a blueprint, getting the physics of the space was I just couldn't make that happen. So it was all about 3D vision for me. How do we take images and start perceiving it in 3D? Applied it to different domains. Started out in the medical domain, furniture augmented reality. There was home automation, industrial automation. To our last startup, which actually introduced into the world of construction, that was smart cities. So we were creating digital replicas of entire cities so that you can get things like your road space condition, your green space index, your violations, code violations. And also cities do a lot of construction, right? So construction monitoring was a natural part of it. So that's where all the three of us got together, three co-founders, started working on that. Right about when COVID happened, right? Obviously, cities' budgets got repurposed, but that took us back to the drawing board saying that, construction is a very, very interesting problem to apply and solve these technologies to real world problems. So, we started back in 2022 and the idea was how do we automate construction monitoring? Now, with that in place, right, we were back in India back then. And this is a funny story I should actually share. Not many people will actually believe this. But what happened was, we knew US was going to be our topmost market
Hmm.
because, the lack of labor, the amount of construction that is happening over here, we 100% knew that US was our topmost priority. But then we were folks sitting back in India, we had a core prototype built, but again, we haven't even properly spoken to construction companies in the US yet. But we know we had a very interesting take on how we could solve this problem. So I tried to reach out to KP. First, it was LinkedIn, other ways of contacting you. Unfortunately, you put it everything behind a wall garden, KP. Couldn't directly add you on LinkedIn as well. So, out of just taking a chance, what we did was went to shadow.vc, the website, and directly applied on a form. They had a form where you could apply it with absolutely no expectation in mind. And this was one of the first investor conversations that we were ever having. So applied it online, put a form, and I see within 5 days I get a response. Like we were genuinely shocked. I think so. It will not even be surprised to even see that response. And then 4 weeks, 4 calls later, we get our first term sheet. And this story totally baffles me, right? Yeah, you always say you need warm intros to reach out to VCs, you need connections, you need introductions, but nothing basically. You have always supported this KP, saying meritocracy is super important, and seeing it actually live in action, right? It's still, even today, it's something very, very different.
Yeah, it's funny. We've talked about it several times because I mean, I think no founder, if you said, "Oh, go hit all the VCs' websites and fill out forms," and I would say like I'm probably very different in that I do believe in a lot of the selection bias that happens in startup world is really kind of this affinity bias, like, oh, I know this person, that person, which doesn't get you fresh ideas. It gets you a lot of recycled ideas. Um, so I've always believed that, if you have one front door and
Hmm.
it's your website and everybody has to walk through that front door equally, it's at least one step towards meritocracy that, and in fact, people get frustrated. I have other VCs will hit me
Mhm.
up and say, I want to introduce you to a founder. And I send them the link to the website. I'm like, send them here.
I've seen that myself too. Some of my friends who are starting up, they say, hey, make me an introduction to KP. And I'm like, apply on his website. Make sure I'm a live example. He will look into it, he will respond. But, people don't exactly understand. But no fault of theirs, KP. You should say
Yeah.
that's how the industry has worked.
Yeah. So you've had some recent news since our humble beginnings.
Yes. So again, super honored and super happy that we were able to close our Series A. Just announced it a few weeks back. Our first round back was in September of 2022, where we had raised 2.3 and then followed it with some strategic investment, totally 4.3 million. And now we have taken to the next leg of our journey where we have raised our Series A of $10 million, KP. And again, thank you for again re-participating and reaffirming your faith on what we are building.
No, I think what you guys are building is it's important, right? I think it's becoming more and more important. I get, I do about 25 calls a week with founders, right? Everybody comes to the website. You know, we split it up a little bit, but I generally still get a lot. And it's getting harder and harder to get excited about software deals.
Hmm.
And I find myself trying to talk founders out of taking on venture capital because they don't, you know, they don't think about scale. They don't think about, I can be super helpful, obviously, but if they don't have a company that can scale, that can benefit from my help and benefit from the capital, then they're just not going to get anywhere. So I think it's been fantastic to see the growth you guys have had. And it's funny, I've had other portfolio companies in the cohort that haven't raised their Series A, and they wanted to know what you guys did that was special. And I was like, there's twofold. We talk VCs talk in very binary words like you need to have a tech moat,
Mm-hmm.
have a market moat, right? And so founders think very binary, like, oh, I need to have a tech moat,
Mm-hmm.
or they think I need to have a marketing moat. I need to.
Marketing mode, yeah, distribution mode.
I think you guys have done a great job of bouncing back and forth around that, right? Initially having a tech moat, then building some marketing moat, getting some key accounts, right? Um, and then going back and building your tech up again, right? So going back and forth because it's not one or the other, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
how do you iterate through that? And I tell people a lot of times, the first year you came from India, you were on job sites.
Correct.
When you were in job trailers, spending time and you had an authentic intellectual curiosity around how things, like I never told you like, hey, you need to go hang out at job sites. You're like, no, I need to go spend time at job sites.
100% KP, and that was such a humbling experience as well, because uh, I have known only software engineers all throughout my life, right? That I have very clear perspective on what these people think like. But and all software engineers, by the way, think they work really really hard, right? Sitting in an AC cabin for 6 hours and they think they work really really hard. Again, no offense, but going on job sites, right, opens up a whole new perspective. You know what working hard is all about actually. Then
Mm-hmm.
you understand, hey, we can pass a very lame statement saying that construction is technology laggard, they don't adopt technology much. But you go and see in the field, right? Then you get that perspective on, how easy the technology is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
how simple it has to be adopted, because these guys are genuinely busy,
Yeah.
not busy having a coffee meeting or a wine lunch somewhere, right?
Playing foosball.
Exactly, playing football in your very hi-fi offices.
Yeah.
These are like genuinely hardworking people, and that perspective I would never have gotten at KP unless I visited sites.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for being an enabler during that part, because even getting access to these construction companies or sites is not easy, right?
Yeah.
But getting that early access, and then obviously you have to go and just grind it there.
Yeah. No, 100%. No, look, I think, you know, a lot of times, my job is to connect, right? To be the connector. But I also am very cognizant of who I put in front of my LPs and my network, that they can actually provide, real value. And, and so in many ways, you made it easy because I would get phone calls from folks saying like, "Oh, NK's such a great guy. He's so smart. He was so helpful. He asked good questions," and I think that makes me look good, right? So as long as you're making me look good, that's all that matters, right?
Yep, I think perfect partnership, KP, in that sense.
So let's talk a little bit about, because I think it's an interesting topic,
Hmm,
which is how we think about sales in this industry.
hmm.
And I wouldn't say you going to job sites was necessarily a sales endeavor. It was truly a research endeavor. It
Correct.
turned into sales, right? And I had this real like debate going on with lots of friends. It's like sales dead,
Hmm.
right? Is sales really a skill that everyone from software to customer success to market, is it really just a skill that we should all have? Because this industry doesn't get excited about talking to just pure salespeople, right? They kind of get turned off by it, even if the salesperson's very knowledgeable and all those things, right? Um, First thing they ask is like, well, what construction companies did you work at? It's very much that. How do you think, that effort you put in? It was like a solid year and a half, right?
That is correct.
And
It's
that's
almost
like
2 years actually. Yeah,
almost 2 years. And then, by the way, in terms of founder sacrifice, a lot of those times was without your family being here, away from your family,
that is also
um,
correct. Yeah.
which is not insignificant, right? In terms of being committed to try to understand these things. Um, I mean, how do you think it would have worked, like, if you weren't, like, passionate about the product and all that? Like, if it was a salesperson, not to be derogatory, I have lots of salespeople in my life. I always joke around when people say, "Hey, KP, you're really good at sales." I'm like, "That's funny. I've never had a quota. I've never had a sales position."
Mhm.
Um, but there's a great book from Daniel Pink called "To Sell Is Human." I love that book because it's basically saying, like, stop viewing sales as this negative attribute. It's just part of being a human. Like, we learn at a very young age. My 3-year-old yesterday, I told him he could have one cookie, and he ate one cookie, and he's like, "Well, that was breakfast. Now it's lunch." So we start, if the motives are there and the incentives are there, at a very young age,
Absolutely.
we learn how to sell, right?
Exactly. I think that's a primary life skill, right?
Right.
And to be very fair, right, I had that false ego myself, KB, to be very honest, right? I've been a technologist all throughout. All my previous roles were that of a CTO.
Mhm,
So I haven't sold ever in my life. So leave alone selling to the US or selling to the construction industry in the US. I have never sold a dollar of anything in my entire life before this.
mhm,
So for me, it was about being that genuinely curious and understanding what people want, right?
mhm,
Because our perspective was very clear. And just before we go a little bit deeper into this topic, right? You would know the story, but I think it will make an interesting tidbit is when we were getting started, like this is in 2022, there were companies, our competitors had raised like hundreds of millions of dollars.
mhm,
In fact, some of the early VCs that we pitched to KP actually told, "Why are you doing this? Don't do this. This market is saturated. In fact, be in India, and maybe some of your these companies can actually buy you out. Probably that's your best bet." So that
mhm,
makes it a venture unfundable company, like you were talking
mhm,
about originally, right? So, and we also genuinely thought that's the case. Like, construction technology is, saturated. Reality capture or reality intelligence even is become a standard of every job site. But these visits, right, going job site to job site, traveling, this opened up my mind actually. What we thought as an assumption that, hey, it's ubiquitous, everyone is using intelligence on the job site, to what was actually happening. There was a huge gap, and you had seen it firsthand as well, incubating some of those companies early on. And I
mhm.
asked you specifically, like, why did you even invest, KP, having seen other companies and their life cycle? So we understood that the technology was neither simple enough, not fast enough, not accurate enough, or not cost effective enough to
Mhm,
become like a standard accessible tool for every job site, irrespective of its size, shape, or geography. So that was a huge opportunity we saw.
mhm.
If we were to do that, if we were to build that, we were very honest, right? We knew there's only one way we can do that. It's only with deep customer understanding, putting ourselves in their shoes, traveling job site to job site. And simple is always complex. The more simple the product is to the end user, all the heavy engineering has to come in the back end. Like
Yep.
Google has that one search bar, or ChatGPT has that one chat window, right? But all the heavy engineering, the indexing, the searching, the algorithms, all are happening in the back end. So to get to that level, right, itself has been that journey. And I would say getting that perspective would have been impossible,
Yep.
because our early customers also told, right, we don't ever like to be sold to. And this, I was interviewing them, and they told it very openly. We want to buy, we have an intent because there's a problem we want to solve, but we hate being sold to. We want
Mhm.
someone who can answer our questions, think and align on the thought process. And we need to have that confidence that these guys have a vision, and they're capable of executing to that vision. And that was an eye opener for me. Then I think we almost never sold KP. You would know that actually, based
Yeah.
on thing, right? It was more about understanding and then saying, hey, this is a right fit. And some of the times we told, we are not the right fit for what you're trying to do.
Yeah. No, I think there's a couple things to kind of unpack there. One, sometimes in this industry, being first to market, there isn't really a first mover advantage. Actually, Nick and I talked on a couple episodes ago was we talk about technical debt a lot
Mhm.
as software companies and tech companies. We don't talk a lot about marketing debt, which is the fact that you try lots of things to break through the market. Some work, some don't work.
Mhm.
Um, and I think a lot of the people that got here first, they had massive marketing debt to educate the market, right?
Mm.
And so when you came in and said, "Hey, we're doing this," I'm like, "Good," because I looked at all your competitors and I just couldn't get there, right? I couldn't get there from a how much money they were raising and the valuations didn't make a lot of sense to me. And that even though they had raised a lot of money, they still really didn't have product market fit. They were working really, really hard to not only get new customers, but expand in their existing customers. And then slowly, there just wasn't as much differentiation. So I think there is something to, I always tell people, Facebook wasn't the first. There was MySpace before that. Google was far from the first.
Mhm.
Right? There was Yahoo and Ask Jeeves and so many of them, right?
Correct.
And so there is the benefit of sitting back and learning and taking a critical eye towards what's going on and really kind of trying to find that vein of gold and that your customers are kind of along for that ride and they really tell you a lot about what's working and what's not working. And I think the other thing for me that stood out was this like your technology worked, right? And I had a call with a group today and I was just like telling them, like, look, this idea of MVP might work for a consumer app.
Mm.
These are real people building real projects. They're not looking for another feature. They need something that works and something that works well.
Mm.
And they don't want to hear from day one, oh, it's on the product roadmap, right? They don't want to hear that on day one. Maybe day 30, 60, 90.
Mm.
I think then they're thinking about it. I think the other thing you guys did very well is you weren't selling the technology first. You were selling being on the project team first,
Mm.
right? Which is super important for our industry because nobody really cares about buying software. That's not what they're like. Here's the jobs to be done.
Mm.
Can you help me? Right? Can you help me? Can you do some of those jobs for me? Which I think your approach has been that way.
Very true, KP, actually. And again, that perspective came from the field. In fact, our first partner customer that we worked with, right? I say getting a good design partner is one of the very, very important facets, especially in your 0 to 1 journey. Because, yeah, as a startup, what we start with, right? We know a piece of technology, but more importantly, we have a set of hypotheses that we want to validate. Now,
Mhm,
this validation is impossible without an actual design partner who has these problems. And
mhm,
Himself was exactly that for us, right? Going on one job site to other, just learning from that. And so you need people with high vision and that agency as well, right?
yeah,
KP, that you need to interact. This is a problem. These guys are capable. Let's work, partner up, and let's solve it in a grand scale.
mhm.
So that again was super cool. Yes, please.
Yeah, and I think so. So I think where a lot of people might miss some of these ideas of finding a good design partner, et cetera. I know for a fact a lot of your design partners early did not spend a dime with you.
Correct.
You did not charge them a dime. Um, Yet they were like overly committed to helping you. And I think a lot of founders believe like, oh, I got a proof of concept. They paid me a little bit of money. And what I tell people is, and this is, it's very counterintuitive sometimes. For large companies,
Hmm.
money is easy. It's a commodity,
I agree. I
right?
totally agree.
Time, time is much harder, right?
Correct.
Them actually committing time. I work with a lot with Schneider Electric, and that's the biggest thing I've learned for them. Working with them for the last almost 20 years is they can send money. I mean, they're a big company. Sending money to do some that's the easy part.
Mhm.
Getting someone's time
Right.
is really, really hard. And I think what you did well, which is a good example, is whenever I talk to your design partners, they never mentioned Track 3D.
Mm.
They said, I love working with NK. NK is fantastic. And, like I'm learning from him. He's learning, like, it was very personal that you were like part of their team. And while that is like zero scalable in any,
Yeah, it is stuff
realm,
people should almost right. Don't do this is absolutely not scalable.
right? But also, it's the unscalable things that I think have longer term impact. And I do think that at the end of the day, they believed in you and what you were trying to do, and you believed in them, that they were on the same mission, right?
Exactly. And it was a risky thing to do as well, KP. If you look in hindsight and see, like, we were very purposeful. We didn't go after a lot of customers or partners. We said very, very narrow. Let's see five and let's make them extremely, extremely successful. In fact, out of that five, also, if you see, there would have been a weighted average between two or three of them that we spend disproportionate amount of time because, as for them, even for us, our time and bandwidth was the number one resource constraint that we had. We
Hmm.
couldn't, even if we wanted to, we couldn't hire like 10 people and put them across saying your product, your customer success, your sales, keep doing this. We could
Hmm.
not have done that. And I think it worked to our advantage really, really well. we
Yeah.
we could spend disproportionate amount of time with them, and we almost had to earn their time,
Yeah.
which is what you are talking about, right? We could earn their time, they could believe in us, trust in us.
No, and I think if people knew the math on where you got to in terms of revenue
Hmm.
and the number of salespeople that you had, they'd be shocked, right? And I talk about this all the time about founder led sales. The first million in recurring revenue, the founder needs to do themselves because you have to figure it out, right?
Okay.
You have to figure it out. And when I see other companies, other startups really trying to scale up sales before, like, way too early, when the founder hasn't figured it out on their own, it's like really telling. I tell people all the time, like, sales is a verb,
Hmm.
and not all salespeople get that.
Hmm.
They think sales
It's
is a
an activity.
title.
Correct. Actually, you're so right. And again, I could get all this first-hand wisdom with you because of our weekly calls and all this. But it's a very important point to double click on, KP, actually, right? Because founder, in fact, I now believe that founder has to be integral part of the sales process until the 10 to 20 million as well. Because the
Mhm.
more you are, the more perspectives you learn, the more relationships you can develop, because
Yeah.
what we understand about our company, no one else has that perspective actually. We know the people, we know the technology, we know the processes, so we can relate to and talk to others, other companies or other design partners in a much more yeah, no one else could actually match to that extent. I think we should use take advantage of this thing, right? It is something to be taken advantage of.
Yeah. I do think there's something that you probably thought was a disadvantage, but I think ended up being an advantage. One, you're not from here.
Hmm.
Two, you're not from construction. So
Correct.
when you were asking questions, like, you actually were trying to, there's a lot of founders that start from the industry, and I worked X number of years at Turner and this place and that place, and they act like they're doing customer discovery.
Hmm.
But the reality is they think they already know the answer. They think they already know, like, I worked at XYZ for 15
Hmm.
years and I saw this. And so when they go out and do customer discovery and engage, it's kind of half-hearted. I think
Leading questions, yeah, people
right.
ask leading questions and all that, yeah.
I think you didn't know. You
I
were
didn't,
actually
I genuinely didn't know.
you were actually asking, right?
I had no clue. I had never been to a construction site in the US. So every question I asked was coming from genuine curiosity and the fact that I knew nothing about it. I was open.
Yeah.
So best part about the industry was I thought people will be impatient because they don't have time, right? We need to respect that.
Yeah.
But it was not the case, KP. I was so pleasantly surprised. You asked questions saying, I know nothing about this, but I can apply technology to solve the problem, but I don't even know what the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Tell me what
I
to do.
think it's ended up being, now you know a lot more, but at the beginning, I think it became a real advantage. And I always tell people, I was in this business for a long time, and as a civil engineer, and then left for a little bit and went into telecom, and then ended up coming back into the industry. Actually, I got back in the industry by buying a civil engineering firm years ago.
Hmm.
Ended up doing some things to it and selling it and making a couple of bucks, um, but people ask me the difference. I was like, this industry literally has the best people, the best humans on this planet are in this industry. Um, and when I went into telecom, there's some real shady people. It's just like making a lot of money, but very shady. But I do think when you have a genuine interest, this industry does like to teach, and like, so let's shift a little bit from that. And we're talking a little bit about one of my posts a couple weeks ago about the joy of construction. And my view of some of the technology, et cetera, is to get away get rid of the things that don't bring us joy,
Mhm.
right? So that we can focus on the things that do create joy to us.
Yes.
Um, and it's a tough business, right? So there's lots of reasons to be upset, to be mad, to be stressed. I think we have one of the highest rates of suicide as an industry. How do you think? I was telling someone we published this like 400-page report on all the construction tech software, right? And I thought about it afterwards. We should have like a joy quotient.
Mm.
How do you think Track 3D provides joy to the industry?
No, I read that post, KP, as usual, very thought provoking. But what I thought, in fact, even while starting Track 3D, right, our core assumption was this: there are certain things that humans are good at, there are certain things designed for machines. So you should actually optimize and automate as many tasks as possible. Let humans do what they excel at. For example, collecting data from the job site or recording your daily progress, quantifying how many people are there, how much work has been done. This is very menial task, it's repetitive, it's boring, and no one is going to do a good job of it because of those reasons, right? You ask people to report manually, they will do it even if you put 10 people on the job only to report your job site. People would do it, but either it will be incomplete, inaccurate, inconsistent, or simply inaccessible. So stakeholders of the project never get the right information, right insights at the right time. Not because people mean bad. You are telling, right? These are some of the best, well-intentioned people. Just because it's very inefficient to do it. So I think, where people excel at making logical decisions, having deep relationships, and, solving issues just by sitting across the table. Now, if you're just talking about collecting data, hey, this data is not right because you collected it, I collected it, it becomes such a it takes exactly the joy away out of, building the right things. So we believe that, especially we are at that age and time where AI has evolved so rapidly. Sensors, both hardware, robotics, cameras have become so good that it's on us to make it simple enough, easy enough to automate these things. And I gave you one example from Track 3D's perspective, but there's so many other things that jobs specifically well designed or things that machines can excel, whereas humans don't like it, they don't find it fun. No one loves creating a 200-page report, right? KPP.
Mhm.
People love to talk about insights, have those collaborations, and I think that was in fact Track 3D's core hypothesis that got the first validation.
Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting, because I do think Um, I always say, like, at a very young age, as kids, we get enamored around building things, right? Whether it's Legos, whether it's cardboard boxes, whatever it is, right? Whatever we can find, we start stacking them, right?
Correct.
And we have so much fun doing it as children. And then we might even go to school. I think about a lot of young people that go into architecture. And I'll
Mhm.
talk to these kids in high school that want to go into architecture, and what they think architecture is very different than what it actually is. And I think, if we can continue to, like, bring joy to people in this work, I think instead of them going home and telling people, oh, it's so hard, it's this, and it's, I was in a deposition, like all the things that make it negative, that if we can somehow, like, combat that with providing people tools and experiences that bring joy back to it, much like when we were 3 years old playing with Legos,
I'll give
then
you one more analogy on that, KP. This was when I was in college, again, Indian college, basically. We were being taught C++, I think so it was. And I used to love coding. Sitting in front of the computer, getting it to do something, architect something was super fun. But then our head of department, a CSE, used to ask us to write all the code down. Whatever you have written on the system or whatever you want to do, write it down on a pen and paper. And that used to suck the joy out of me like anything. I was like, I had to fight with him actually. I was like, programming is meant to be done on a computer. You're writing computer's language so the computer understands it. You're asking it to do a task. You're defeating its purpose by just reporting it on a piece of paper actually. So I think the same analogy applies over there, right? Building a Lego, super fun. Now ask someone to actually document the process of a Lego, basically, which piece went where, when did it come up, or doing all of that. No one would enjoy that.
yeah. No, it's funny, like in coding too, our a lot of my previous companies, it was always like, this guy's really good at writing code,
Hmm.
but he's terrible at documenting. This other person, their code is okay, but they're
But
very good at documenting. And it was always like, which software engineer would you rather have, right? And generally the right answer is both.
hmm,
But you know, being able to document your work and all of this, it's not the fun part of the job. I deal with a lot of engineering firms, and it's like, yeah, I missed that class in college when we filled out our timesheets.
exactly.
And it's really like this, like, that is the worst thing in the world. Like, why do I, like, no one wants to do that. And it just sucks all the joy out of the work, is doing timesheets. So
Exactly. And you would have seen this, right, KP? Everyone who works on a job site takes tremendous pride in it. In fact, I would not kid you, but I was driving around with my parents and my kids. Any job site that we or Track 3D has been a part of, I'm like super proud to say, hey, we are working on this job site. This is the job site I personally went to. These are the things you want to associate yourself with. No one would ever say this is a project where I wrote the report to or monitored the progress of on a day-to-day basis or check schedule adherence, right? These are things, I mean, again, you don't simply enjoy it.
yeah, that's one of the things I've really tried to coach, like, CEOs of these firms and leadership in these firms. Um, let everyone take attribution to the project, no matter how big, how small. One,
Hmm,
it doesn't cost you anything. And
correct.
for people to feel like, even if all you did was drop off the porta potties at that project, you
Hmm,
had a role. So you get to call it your project, right? That's my project. Oh, I worked on that stadium. Like, let people do it. It doesn't cost anything. But sometimes these senior leaders, like, make junior people feel bad about that, right?
hmm,
Because, well, you're not the engineer of record. You're not the principal architect. This is my project, right? It's like,
hmm.
leave it alone. Let everybody take credit. Let everybody be part of it.
100%. And I say, and to tie back to the original thought process of learning from sight, right, KP? And you know this, but I think it's a good conversation. Now, what I'm asking all the team members from our side also at Track 3D to do is either, like, you might be a product manager, product lead coming from India, I say, guys, you can't be a product lead until you are on site. So they're
Yep.
doing exactly the same thing I was doing a couple of years back, and I'm continuing doing now.
Yeah.
Also, all our customer success people, or even our sales team that we are building right now, I said your number one metric should be visit sites, actually. Visit sites,
Mhm.
correlate with them, have conversations, learn. Now let's have that compounding effect. Let's
Yeah.
make this process more scalable with more people doing it.
So we're gonna wrap up here in a second. So what do you think the chances are your kids go into the construction business in some form?
Actually, they love it. Very surprisingly, because my daughter, when she was 5 years old, I was making her pictures actually. So she was
Mhm.
my pitch test. Now she knows more about it probably than I do, jokingly. But she loves construction, and my son loves construction. They love tech, and I think so. With what is possible, I think so. Next generation, I'm very positive will like it more. Like we make bring the joy back, as you said, right, KP? Bring the joy back in actually constructing things.
Yeah.
I'm very positive on the next generation, especially with these advancements and what is happening. People will love coming back to the job site more than ever.
All right. Well, awesome. It was good catching up with you. Congrats on the Series A. It's always fun. It's always fun to see our founders graduate to the Series A. Um, unfortunately, means you get less time with me because now you have other people that want all your time.
No,
But
I moved to the Bay Area because of you, KP. You need to remember that.
awesome. All right, man. It was good talking to you.
Great talking to you. Thanks for having me, KP.